I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I don't fear it. That's the bit that excites me.
They thought he would never find out. But he did. And when Prince William discovered exactly what he had inherited, the moment Queen Elizabeth II took her final breath, everything inside the royal family changed overnight.
You give them the security and the safety that they need. And we're a very open family, so we talk about things that bother us and things that trouble us. But you never quite know the knock-on effects it can have.
Billions in property, thousands of acres, ancient castles, all of it suddenly his. But it was not the inheritance that shocked everyone. It was what William did next. One decision, one name removed from a payroll. And Queen Camilla completely lost it. The royal family has never seen anything like this. And trust us, you are not ready for what happened behind closed doors. There are moments in life that change everything in an instant. One day you are living your life as normal, and the next, the ground beneath you shifts in a way you never quite expected. For most people, those moments come in the form of loss, the death of someone you love, a parent, a grandparent, someone who had always just been there. And when that loss comes early, when you are still young and the world still feels large and uncertain, it leaves a mark that stays with you for a very long time. Grief at a young age is a particular kind of pain. It is not just the sadness of missing someone. It is the confusion of having to grow up faster than you were ready for, of having to carry something heavy before you have built up the strength to hold it. Most people who experience that kind of loss simply have to find a way through it. They lean on family, on friends, on time. They carry on. But for a very small number of people, grief arrives alongside something else entirely, something unexpected, something that changes not just their emotional life, but their practical one too. For Prince William, the death of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, on the 8th of September 2022 brought both of those things at once. It brought mourning, and it brought inheritance on a scale that is genuinely difficult to get your head around. To understand what William inherited, you first have to understand what the British royal family actually owns. Most people have a rough sense that the royals are wealthy. They see the palaces, the ceremonies, the carriages rolling through central London. But the true scale of what sits behind all of that, the land, the properties, the income, the centuries of accumulated wealth, is something that rarely gets explained clearly. When it is, it tends to stop people in their tracks. On the day Queen Elizabeth II passed away at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, a series of legal and financial changes came into effect immediately. These were not decisions that needed to be made or voted on. They happened automatically, as they have done for centuries under British law and royal tradition. Titles shifted, roles changed, and enormous amounts of wealth and property moved from one set of hands to another. For William, who was 40 years old at the time, the most significant of these changes came directly from his father's new position. When Charles became King Charles III, William automatically became the Duke of Cornwall. That title, which has existed for nearly 700 years, came with something attached to it that very few titles in the world can claim. It came with the Duchy of Cornwall. The Duchy of Cornwall is one of the most valuable private estates anywhere on the planet. At the time William inherited it, it was valued at approximately $1.2 billion. It covers around 135,000 acres of land spread across England, including 18,710 acres in Cornwall itself, nearly all of the Isles of Scilly off the Cornish coast, a significant portion of Dartmoor in Devon, and large stretches of land in Herefordshire and Somerset. Alongside the land, it includes farms, holiday cottages, historic buildings, and a range of financial investments that have been built up over many generations. The duchy was originally created in 1337 by King Edward III, who established it for his son Edward, known as the Black Prince, who became the first ever Duke of Cornwall. The founding charter set out a rule that has held ever since. The Duke of Cornwall should always be the monarch's eldest son and heir to the throne. For nearly 700 years, that principle has been followed. And now, after all that time, the duchy belongs to William. The financial side of this inheritance is worth pausing on for a moment. In 2025, Prince William earned approximately $30 million from the duchy in a single year. That income came from a wide range of sources, including tenant farmers working the land, people renting holiday cottages, returns on financial investments, and various other rights and revenues that have accumulated across centuries. It is also worth noting that, legally speaking, the duchy is exempt from corporation tax. William pays income tax on the money voluntarily, not because he is required to. To put that into some kind of perspective, this is an estate that generates tens of millions of pounds every year, sits on some of the most historically significant land in England, and has been doing so in one form or another since the 14th century. William did not build this. He did not earn it in the conventional sense. He inherited it, the way the rules of the British monarchy have always intended. But here is where the story takes a turn that caught a lot of people's attention. Inheriting something of that scale does not just mean receiving wealth. It means making decisions. It means choosing who works for you, who manages the properties, who receives a salary from the estate. And when William began making those decisions, it quickly became clear that his choices were going to look quite different from the ones his father had made before him. The decision that attracted the most attention and generated the most headlines in royal circles involved a woman named Annabel Elliot. Annabel is Queen Camilla's younger sister. She is a respected interior designer who had worked on duchy properties for close to 20 years, ever since Charles employed her following his marriage to Camilla in 2005. She was paid annually from the duchy's accounts for her work on rental properties across Cornwall, Wales, and the Isles of Scilly. According to duchy financial records, those payments ranged from around £19,000 to over £80,000 in a given year. When William took over, he removed her from the payroll. Royal expert Emmy Griffiths commented publicly on the decision, noting that since William became Duke of Cornwall, Annabel Elliot had been taken off the payroll, which had caused, as she put it, a few ripples. That was something of an understatement. The decision sent a message that went well beyond a simple staffing change. It signaled something about how William intends to run things, and it raised questions about the relationship between the future king and his stepmother's family that have not gone away. What makes all of this more than just a piece of royal gossip is the context sitting beneath it. The history between William and Camilla is not straightforward. It never has been. And while the duchy decision may look, on the surface, like a business matter, many observers have suggested that it reflects something deeper, something rooted in decades of complicated family history that no title or inheritance can simply erase. This is the story of what William inherited, what he has done with it, and what it tells us about where the British royal family is heading. The numbers are extraordinary, the history runs deep, and the decisions being made right now, quietly, through payroll reports and management reviews, may well shape the monarchy for a generation to come. To truly understand what Prince William now holds, and what he stands to gain in the years ahead, it helps to step back and look at the full picture. Because the Duchy of Cornwall, extraordinary as it is, represents only one part of the wealth and property that will eventually sit in William's hands. There is more to this story, and the more you look at it, the more remarkable it becomes. The duchy itself has already been covered in broad terms, but it is worth going a little deeper into what it actually consists of, because the raw numbers alone do not quite capture what 135,000 acres of English land really means in practice. This is not a single stretch of countryside that you could drive through in an afternoon. It is a collection of properties, farms, coastlines, and communities spread across multiple counties, each with its own history, its own tenants, and its own relationship with the crown that goes back generations. In Cornwall alone, the duchy owns nearly 19,000 acres. That includes farmland that has been worked by tenant farmers for centuries, stretches of coastline that attract visitors from all over the world, and properties of genuine historic significance. Then there are the Isles of Scilly, the small archipelago that sits around 28 miles off the southwestern tip of Cornwall. The duchy owns almost all of it. These islands, with their mild climate and striking landscapes, are home to a community of just over 2,000 people, many of whom live and work on land that technically belongs to William. Dartmoor, the vast open moorland in Devon that covers around 368 square miles, also falls within the duchy's reach. The duchy owns roughly half of Dartmoor, including land that sits within the national park. This is ancient, rugged terrain, home to wild ponies, prehistoric stone circles, and some of the most dramatic scenery in the south of England. The fact that a portion of it belongs to the heir to the throne is not a recent development. It has been this way for a very long time. Beyond the landscape, the duchy also includes a portfolio of properties used for commercial and residential purposes. Holiday cottages in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly generate rental income. Farms across the southwest of England are worked by tenants who pay rent to the duchy. Financial investments built up over decades add further revenue to the estate's annual income. In 2025, all of that combined to produce around $30 million for William. That figure, significant as it sounds, represents a single year's return from an estate that has been generating income in one form or another since the 14th century. It is also worth being clear about the legal and financial structure that surrounds the duchy. The estate is not a public body. It is not managed by a government department or overseen by a parliamentary committee. It is a private estate, owned and managed by the Duke of Cornwall, whoever that happens to be at any given time. The duchy is legally exempt from corporation tax, meaning it has no obligation to pay tax on its profits the way a normal business would. William, like his father before him, pays income tax on his duchy earnings voluntarily. That arrangement is unusual, to say the least, and it reflects the particular legal position that the duchy has occupied for centuries. Now, to understand the full scope of what William either controls or will one day inherit, it is necessary to look beyond the duchy entirely and consider two other properties that sit at the very heart of the British monarchy. These are Sandringham House in Norfolk and Balmoral Castle in the Scottish Highlands. Unlike the royal palaces, which are owned by the Crown and made available to the monarch, these two estates are different. They are privately owned, and that distinction matters enormously. Sandringham House is a country estate covering several thousand acres in the county of Norfolk on the eastern coast of England. It is a working estate, focused on farming, conservation, and the stewardship of its land and buildings. For generations, it has served as a private retreat for the British royal family, particularly during the Christmas period. The royal family gathers at Sandringham every year for the holidays, and it is one of the places where the family lives, something closer to a private life, away from the formality of the official palaces. Sandringham was not always a royal property. It was purchased in 1862 for the future King Edward VII, and it has remained in royal hands ever since. It was inherited by Queen Elizabeth II from her father, King George VI, and when Elizabeth died in September 2022, it passed directly to King Charles III. Balmoral Castle, situated in the Scottish Highlands, is another privately owned estate. It covers around 53,000 acres of highland landscape, taking in forests, moorland, rivers, and mountains. Balmoral was purchased in the 1850s by Prince Albert for Queen Victoria, who loved the Highlands and spent a great deal of time there. It has been a fixture of royal life ever since. Queen Elizabeth II was particularly attached to it. She spent her summers there every year, and significantly, it was at Balmoral that she passed away in September 2022. After her death, the castle and its estate passed to Charles, just as Sandringham did. Both Sandringham and Balmoral represent something more than just financial assets, although financially they are considerable. Forbes estimated the late Queen's personal fortune at around $500 million, and both estates formed a significant part of that figure. But beyond the money, these are properties with deep emotional and symbolic meaning for the royal family. They are places where history has been made, where private grief has been processed away from public view, where prime ministers have visited, and where generations of monarchs have lived out the quieter, more personal parts of their lives. The critical point, and the one that has direct relevance to the current tensions within the royal family, is what happens to these estates once Charles is gone. Because both Sandringham and Balmoral are personally owned by the monarch, they do not automatically pass to the crown or to the state. They pass to the next monarch. When Charles eventually dies, both estates will go to William. At that point, William will become the owner of two of the most historically significant private properties in Britain, in addition to everything he already holds through the duchy. This is where the situation becomes particularly relevant to Queen Camilla. As Charles's wife, she currently shares these homes. She lives at Sandringham and Balmoral alongside her husband, and her family has benefited from the access and influence that comes with that. But her position is tied to Charles. It is not tied to the properties themselves. When Charles dies and William becomes king, those estates will belong to William. Camilla's continued access to them, her ability to visit or stay, would depend entirely on William's willingness to extend that invitation. She would become, in practical terms, a guest rather than a resident. Alongside these private estates, William's financial future also includes the sovereign grant, the public funding provided to the monarch to support official royal duties. For the period covering 2025 to 2026, the sovereign grant rose to £132 million. When William becomes king, he will receive that funding as well. Then there is the Crown Estate itself, a vast portfolio of land and property valued in the tens of billions of pounds, which is managed separately but contributes directly to the sovereign grant through its profits. And beyond all of that, there is a private art collection, a portfolio of jewels, and a range of investments built up across multiple generations. Taken together, what William currently holds and what he stands to inherit represents one of the most extraordinary concentrations of private wealth in the world. It has been accumulated not through business ventures or modern investment strategies, but through centuries of inheritance, tradition, and the particular legal structures that have allowed British royal wealth to pass from one generation to the next, largely intact. Understanding all of this is essential to making sense of the decisions William has already begun to make, because when you know what he controls and what he is preparing to control, the choices he makes about who works for him, who manages his properties, and who benefits from his estates take on a much greater significance. These are not just staffing decisions, they are early signals of how William intends to govern, who he trusts, and what kind of king he plans to be. The quiet reshaping of the duchy's payroll is just the beginning of a much larger transition that has already started and will only become more visible as time goes on. There is a particular kind of message that powerful people send not through speeches or press releases, but through quiet decisions that only make sense when you understand the full context behind them. The removal of Annabel Elliot from the Duchy of Cornwall's payroll is exactly that kind of message. On the surface, it looks like a routine administrative change. A new manager takes over a large estate and decides to bring in different people. It happens in businesses all the time, but in the world of the British royal family, where every decision is loaded with history and every relationship carries weight, nothing is ever quite that simple. Annabel Elliot is Queen Camilla's younger sister. She is 75 years old and has built a respected career as an interior designer, known for a style that blends traditional English country house aesthetics with a more relaxed, livable approach to modern interiors. She is not a peripheral figure in Camilla's life. By all accounts, she is one of the people Camilla trusts most, a close confidant who has remained a constant presence throughout the years that saw her sister go from a controversial figure on the edges of royal life to a fully recognized queen consort. That closeness matters when you are trying to understand why William's decision to remove her from the payroll generated the kind of attention it did. The professional relationship between Annabel and the royal household began in 2005 when Charles married Camilla and subsequently hired her sister to work on his properties. Over the course of nearly 20 years, she took on responsibility for the interior design and management of duchy rental properties across Cornwall, Wales, and the Isles of Scilly. She shaped the look and feel of some of the most charming properties in the royal collection, adding what observers described as an artistic and personal touch to cottages and historic buildings that form part of the duchy's commercial offering to the public. According to the duchy's annual accounts, her payments varied considerably from year to year, ranging from around £19,000 at the lower end to over £80,000 in more active years. Across nearly 2 decades, those payments added up to hundreds of thousands of pounds in total. Then William took over as Duke of Cornwall in September 2022, and the arrangement came to an end. Royal expert Emmy Griffiths addressed the situation directly, explaining that since William had taken over, Annabel Elliot had been removed from the payroll. Griffiths noted that this had caused, in her words, a few ripples and attracted a few headlines. A source close to William was more direct about the reasoning, suggesting that William wanted to cut away what they described as royal hangers-on and reduce the kind of lavish spending that had characterized Charles's management of the duchy over the decades. The language was pointed. The intention was clear. What happened next reinforced the message considerably. Around the same time that Annabel Elliot lost her role, William appointed 2 of his own trusted friends to positions within the estate. Harry Aubrey Fletcher and William Vancouy, both of whom serve as godparents to William's children, Prince George and Prince Louis, were brought in to take on roles at the Duchy. Out went a member of Camilla's immediate family. In came people from William's own personal circle. The contrast was stark, and it was not lost on anyone paying attention to the internal workings of the royal household. It would be easy to read this purely as a business decision. William inherited a large and complex estate, and he chose to staff it with people he knows and trusts personally. That is a reasonable thing for any new manager to do. But the specific choice of who was removed and who replaced her suggests that something more deliberate was at work. This was not simply about finding the most qualified people for the roles. It was about drawing a line, about making clear in the understated way that the royal family tends to communicate these things, that a new era had begun and that the arrangements of the previous one would not simply carry over by default. To understand why that line carries the emotional charge that it does, you have to go back further, further in fact than the events of 2022. You have to go back to the 1980s and 1990s, to the years when William was a child growing up inside one of the most publicly scrutinized marriages in modern history. Prince William was born in 1982. By the time he was old enough to begin understanding the world around him, his parents' marriage was already in serious difficulty. The relationship between Charles and Diana had broken down in ways that were becoming increasingly difficult to conceal from the public, and the reasons for that breakdown were no secret within the family. Charles had maintained a long-standing relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles, a connection that stretched back to the early 1970s and had continued even after his marriage to Diana. In a 1994 television interview, Charles confirmed that he had been unfaithful to Diana, a moment that landed with enormous force across the country and around the world. For Diana, the years of that marriage were deeply painful. She spoke openly, in her own way and in her own time, about the loneliness she experienced, about the sense of being shut out, about the impact that Charles's relationship with Camilla had on her own mental and emotional health. William and his younger brother Harry grew up inside that reality. They were not shielded from it entirely. Children rarely are, even when adults try their best to protect them. They watched their mother suffer and they loved her deeply. Diana died in Paris in August 1997 following a car crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. William was 15 years old. Harry was 12. They were at Balmoral when they were told, and they faced what followed: the public outpouring of grief, the scrutiny, the pressure of mourning in front of the entire world, at an age when most young people are barely equipped to handle ordinary adolescent life, let alone anything of that magnitude. The impact of that loss on both brothers has been well documented in the years since. It shaped them in ways that are still visible today. William, by all accounts, has made a genuine effort to move beyond the pain of that history. He attended his father's wedding to Camilla in 2005, which itself required a considerable degree of emotional maturity from a young man who had every reason to find the occasion difficult. He has interacted with Camilla publicly over the years in a way that has been outwardly civil and appropriate. He has not made public statements that could be read as hostile toward her, and he has not done anything that would suggest he is pursuing a personal vendetta against her or her family. But accepting someone as part of your family, sitting across from them at formal occasions and being polite and respectful is a different thing from accepting their relatives as fixtures of the business empire you are about to inherit. The Duchy of Cornwall is not a family dinner. It is a $1.2 billion estate with hundreds of employees, thousands of tenants, and a responsibility to communities across the southwest of England. William is preparing to be king. The decisions he makes about how that estate is run are not personal gestures. They are leadership choices, and they reflect a broader set of values and priorities that he is beginning to make visible. What the removal of Annabel Elliot reveals is that William draws a clear distinction between his private acceptance of Camilla as his father's wife and his professional decisions about who belongs in his organisation. Camilla's family benefited enormously from Charles's generosity over 2 decades. That generosity was Charles's to give, and it reflected his own relationships and loyalties. But William's loyalty does not automatically extend in the same direction. His loyalty, as demonstrated by his staffing choices, runs toward the people he has chosen himself, people from his own life and his own circle of trust. A royal source quoted at the time described the decision plainly, saying that William's move sends a message. Whether that message was intended primarily as a signal to Camilla's family, to the wider royal household, or to the public at large is open to interpretation. It was probably, in some measure, all three. The British monarchy has always communicated in this way, through action rather than announcement, through the slow accumulation of decisions that only reveal their full meaning over time. What is clear is that the tension running beneath the surface of the royal family's public image is real. It is rooted in history that does not simply dissolve with time, and William is now in a position to act on it in ways that carry genuine consequence. He has the estate, he has the authority, and he has already shown, quietly but unmistakably, that he intends to use both. There is a version of this story that is easy to tell. A young prince inherits a vast estate, clears out the people his father employed, and brings in his own circle. Tensions rise with his stepmother's family. Headlines are written, the public watches with interest, and then, after a few weeks, the news cycle moves on and everyone forgets about it. That version is not wrong exactly. Those things did happen, but it misses almost everything that actually matters about what is unfolding within the British royal family right now, and what it tells us about where the monarchy is heading in the years to come. Because what William is doing is not really about Annabel Elliot, and it is not really about Camilla, and it is not even, at its core, about the Duchy of Cornwall. It is about the transfer of power from one generation to the next. It is about a future king serving notice, quietly and deliberately, that the world he inherits will be shaped by his own judgment and not by the arrangements his father made before him. And it is about a family carrying the weight of a complicated history into an uncertain future, trying to find a way forward that works for the institution, even when it does not work particularly well for the individuals involved. To appreciate the full scale of what William is preparing to inherit, it helps to look at the numbers one more time, not to repeat what has already been established, but to place them in a broader context. Forbes estimated the late Queen Elizabeth II's personal fortune at around $500 million at the time of her death. That figure included her private jewellery collection, her art holdings, her personal investments, and the two privately owned estates, Balmoral and Sandringham. The royal family's total wealth, when you include land, property, and investments across all the various holdings associated with the crown, has been estimated at a minimum of £18 billion. That number is almost certainly conservative. When William eventually becomes king, he will step into a financial position that is without parallel in the private world. The Duchy of Cornwall, already generating around $30 million a year for him, will remain in his hands. Balmoral and Sandringham will pass to him from Charles. The sovereign grant, which rose to £132 million for the period covering 2025 to 2026, will be directed to him to support the costs of his official royal duties. The Crown Estate, one of the largest property portfolios in the United Kingdom, with holdings valued in the tens of billions, will contribute to that grant through its annual profits. There is also the private art collection, accumulated across generations, the jewels, the investments, and the countless other assets that form part of the broader royal inheritance. All of that is extraordinary on its own. But what makes it genuinely significant, beyond the sheer scale of the numbers, is the responsibility that comes attached to it. The British monarchy is not simply a wealth management exercise. It is an institution with a public role, a symbolic function, and a relationship with the communities and people connected to its vast landholdings that goes back centuries. When William earns $30 million from the duchy in a single year, that money comes from real people. Tenant farmers working land in Cornwall, families renting holiday cottages on the Isles of Scilly, communities in Devon who live and work within the boundaries of the Dartmoor estate. Those relationships carry obligations, and those obligations do not disappear just because the man at the top of the organisation has changed. This tension became visible in a specific and telling way after it was reported that William had earned $30 million from the duchy in 2025. Some residents in Cornwall reacted with frustration, expressing a sense that the royal family had become disconnected from the communities that contribute to that income. The criticism was not necessarily fair in every respect, but it reflected something real. Owning 135,000 acres of English land is not a passive exercise. It comes with expectations, with relationships that need tending, and with a kind of accountability that cannot simply be managed from a distance. William is discovering in real time that the duchy is not just an asset, it is a responsibility, and the people connected to it have opinions about how that responsibility should be exercised. That broader context matters when thinking about the changes William has already made to the duchy's staffing arrangements and the changes that are still to come. The decision to remove Annabel Elliot from the payroll was significant, not because of the amount of money involved, which, relative to the scale of the estate, was relatively modest, but because of what it represented. It was an early and visible signal of how William intends to run things. And signals of that kind, in the world of the British monarchy, tend to carry considerably more weight than the specific decisions they relate to. For Camilla's family, the implications are already being felt. Annabel Elliot lost her income from the duchy, a connection she had held for nearly 20 years. Buckingham Palace confirmed that she would retain some involvement with the royal household when possible, and reports indicated that she had continued working on Charles's Sandringham estate in Norfolk. But that connection runs through Charles, not through William. Once Charles is gone, her continued relationship with the royal family will depend entirely on William's willingness to maintain it. Given what he has already demonstrated about his approach to those inherited arrangements, that is not something her family can take for granted. Camilla's own position is worth examining carefully here, because it is more complicated than it might appear from the outside. Right now, she holds a strong and settled place within the royal family. She lives at Buckingham Palace and at Clarence House, and she spends time at both Sandringham and Balmoral alongside Charles. She has official public duties, a recognised title, and the full support of her husband. Her position as Queen Consort is secure for as long as Charles is alive and on the throne. But her position beyond that is less certain. If she outlives Charles, she would most likely become known as Queen Dowager, and she would be entitled to certain financial provisions and assets. Clarence House, valued at around $72 million, and Highgrove House, valued at around $39 million, are properties that could potentially remain available to her in some form. She would also receive financial support to maintain an appropriate standard of living, as is customary for the widow of a British monarch. However, Sandringham and Balmoral, the two privately owned estates where she currently spends a significant portion of her time, would not be hers to keep. They belong personally to the monarch, and when Charles dies, they will pass to William. At that point, Camilla's access to those properties would be entirely at William's discretion. She could be invited to visit, she could be welcomed as a guest, or she could find herself without any dramatic confrontation or public falling out, simply no longer part of the rhythm of life at those estates. The decision would be William's, and William alone. It is worth noting that Camilla has already taken some steps that suggest she is, on some level, preparing for a future that looks different from the present. She sold her private property, Ray Mill House in Wiltshire, which she had owned before her marriage to Charles and had used as a personal retreat. She described gardening there as the best therapy in the world. Selling it could mean any number of things. It might reflect a desire to commit fully to her royal life with Charles. It might reflect a practical reassessment of her long-term property situation. Whatever the reason, it was a notable decision, and it removed one of the few things in her life that existed entirely outside the royal framework. Stepping back from the specific individuals involved, what this story really illuminates is something fundamental about how the British monarchy works and how it has always worked. It is, at its core, an institution built on inheritance, on the idea that wealth, property, title, and responsibility pass from one generation to the next in an unbroken line stretching back across centuries. Each new monarch inherits not just the assets, but the relationships, the obligations, the tensions, and the history that come attached to them. And each new monarch, in their own way, has to decide what to carry forward and what to leave behind. William understands this better than most people ever will. He grew up inside it. He watched his grandmother manage it for 70 years with a discipline and a consistency that earned her enormous respect across the world. He watched his father wait for decades to step into the role, and he has watched Charles navigate the particular challenges of taking on the crown later in life, after a long career of operating as the heir. Now it is William's turn to prepare, and the preparations have already begun. The changes he is making to the duchy are small in financial terms, but large in symbolic ones. Removing Annabel Elliot cost the estate a relatively modest amount each year, but the message it sends, to Camilla's family, to the wider royal household, and to anyone watching closely enough to understand what is happening, is not modest at all. It says that the transition from Charles's era to William's has already started. It says that the loyalties and arrangements of one generation will not simply be inherited by the next. It says that William is paying attention, that he is making his own decisions, and that those decisions will reflect his own values and priorities rather than his father's. There are genuine questions worth asking about what all of this means for the monarchy's public standing. The royal family draws a significant part of its legitimacy from the sense that it is above the ordinary kind of internal politics and personal rivalries that characterize other powerful institutions. When stories about payroll changes and family tensions become public, they complicate that image. Some observers have argued that William's approach, however understandable it might be on a personal and professional level, risks generating negative attention at a time when the royal family is already navigating a difficult period in terms of public perception. Others take a different view. They argue that William's willingness to make clear decisions, to establish his own identity as the future head of the institution rather than simply maintaining everything as it was, is precisely what a modern monarchy needs. That an institution which fails to evolve, which allows the weight of old arrangements and inherited loyalties to accumulate unchecked, is one that eventually loses the confidence of the public it is supposed to serve. The truth probably sits somewhere between those two positions. William is entitled to run the duchy as he sees fit, to employ the people he trusts, and to prepare for his eventual role in the way that makes sense to him. At the same time, the history he carries, the complicated feelings about his mother, about Camilla, about the years of pain that preceded Diana's death, and the years of adjustment that followed it, will always be part of the context in which his decisions are understood. He cannot separate himself from that history entirely, and he probably would not want to. It shaped him. It continues to shape the way people interpret everything he does. What is certain is that the estates belong to him, that the decisions are his to make, and that the legacy he builds across the decades ahead will be his own. The line of inheritance from Queen Victoria through to King Charles III will continue into William's reign and, in time, into George's. Each generation will add something to that story. Each will leave something behind. The quiet decisions being made right now, is in. Payroll reports and management reviews and staffing announcements that most people barely notice are the opening chapters of William's contribution to that very long story. And if history is any guide, those quiet beginnings tend to matter far more than anyone realizes at the time.